Hello, and welcome to the Deluxe Mixing Pod. Welcome back if you've been here before, and thank you very much if you have been. And welcome if it's your first time. It's always a little bit of a mixed bag around here, but it's always something music related, and I do hope you find it interesting. We're going to go into a topic today which is important for every aspiring engineer, producer, or really anybody involved with the record-making process, and also people who are already doing it. It's also really a topic for the artists to pay attention to, and I really hope you do. I'm going to start off with some lyrics today from a record that I really love. Maybe you know it, and you may find yourself living in a shotgun shack. Well, it never got quite that bad. And you may find yourself in another part of the world. I am right now. And you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile. I'm not really a car guy, but hey, never mind. And you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife. That part I have nailed. And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? That album was produced by Brian Eno. And by the time I stumbled across Talking Heads and this particular record, I already knew who Brian Eno was. Why? Well, it's the same answer to the question, well, how did I get here? And that is one simple thing. Credits. That is, the credits on the back of albums. There were quite a few records in my house growing up. My mom had some pretty cool records, and so did my aunt and my uncles. Now, they all went off and joined the army, and my aunt went to university and left behind these records. And of course, me, as a music-crazy kid, would spend hours listening to these things, and while I was listening to them, would of course read all of the credits. So I'd already come across this weird band called Roxy Music, who, sure enough, was produced by Brian Eno. What was a producer? What was an engineer? What were these places, these recording studios? Every single record at that point in time included a lyric sheet and a list of credits of who did what on the particular record. And I found this stuff fascinating, and I somehow memorized all of this information pretty much about every record I ever listened to. And this continued when we moved to CD. Now, the vinyl album was wonderful, of course, because it's about 1 foot by 1 foot square, which means you could put a 2 foot by 3 foot poster just folded into 6, shove it in there. Plenty of room for lyrics, plenty of room for credits, plenty of room for a poster of David Lee Roth chained to a metal fence. Don't believe me? Google it. Helmut Newton had a lot to answer for. The point is, there was real estate and somewhere to put the credits so you could learn and find out who did what on the albums. And quite honestly, that's what inspired me to start this whole thing in the first place. I wanted to be somebody who recorded albums, who maybe produced albums, did something like that. I always knew that's what I wanted to do with my life. And the only way I really knew what those things were was by looking at the credits of albums. Now, things moved on, we got CDs, and the real estate got smaller, but you could still have a booklet, and you could still have pretty comprehensive credits. And I remember me being at school, writing pretend liner notes to some album I was going to make in the future, and putting my favorite studios in, my favorite engineers, you get the idea. Dreaming of the future. And this was completely normal because we knew who did things. And that's how the people who made these records became legends to us people who dreamt of doing this one day in the future. Now, let's move to the present day. Piracy kicked in, and then piracy essentially triggered the streaming age, which is where we are now. And when the streamers launched, there were pretty much no credits. You might get a songwriter credit if you were lucky. But where does this credit information come from? Well, now it comes from what they call the metadata. This is the data that goes along with the music when it's submitted to distributors. Early on, there weren't really that many options of the information you could include. But as time has gone on, it has evolved, and now on some platforms, let's say like Tidal, has expanded credits. So you can list your producer, you can list your engineer, you can list your mixer, you can list your mastering engineer, and Apple has also started to make moves in that direction. However, you have been able to enter this information for quite some time, and it quite often just doesn't get entered through sheer laziness by the artists and the labels. So if you are an artist, I'm going to beg you, please fill in your metadata and credit your people to give the next generation a chance of being recognized for their work. Now, where can we find credits today? There are a few places. The oldest, perhaps, is AllMusic, but unfortunately, AllMusic tends to only be records which have been released either through a major or through distribution via a major, and they tend to be very incomplete. Also, the process to update those credits is very difficult. There is a process. You can submit your credits to AllMusic, but in my experience, they either don't bother to update them, or maybe they'll update them in a year or two. So it's less than ideal. There's another repository called discogs.com, but that also has its challenges because it's more of a record collector's site, and they don't really care about your credits either, unless it's printed physically on a sleeve. And as we know, a good proportion of releases don't even come out in physical format anymore. They are very resistant to your credits being added. In fact, I made a record maybe a year or two ago, did quite well. The producer is quite famous, and I would have loved to have had my credit on Discogs where it should be. So people would hear this cool album, go, oh, who mixed it? Oh, you mixed it? Cool. How about I hire you? That's why this is important to you guys. But I added the credit, and then of course the admins were like, well, no, we don't know you did it. It's like, well, why not? It's not on the sleeve. And sure enough, the artist hadn't printed my name on the physical sleeve. Now, this also means that it wasn't submitted in the metadata, so nobody in the world will ever know I mixed this record, unless they happen to catch the credits in, an Instagram post or something that the artist put out at the beginning of the launch of the record. And you know what? It's not even an isolated thing. Perhaps even the biggest credit of my career is missing. Why? Well, honestly, the producer probably just forgot my name. Now, the studio where the song was recorded was credited, and seeing as I was the only engineer there at the studio when the song was recorded, and unless it just miraculously recorded itself, I'm pretty sure I was the engineer who should get their credit. I was even called out by somebody for saying I'd worked with this artist when they couldn't find the credit. That's humiliating. It shouldn't happen, and that's why this is important. So, it's up to you as an artist or producer to really, really be on the ball and insist that your artists credit you when you make records, so people can find you and hire you if they love your work in the future. Because there's a million people out there who do what we do, and your particular sound and style might appeal to people, and that is probably why they will hire you in the future. There is a newish service, which I do recommend, called muso.ai, and this is a very quickly growing and comprehensive credits database who credits all of the people who worked on a record. The only downside being you can only add songs which are currently streaming on Spotify. If it's not on Spotify, no dice. Fortunately, pretty much every release is on Spotify, so you can use that to your advantage. I know we can never put the genie back in the bottle, but in order for our creative professions to continue and for us to be able to build careers for ourselves, it's very, very important people have visibility and awareness of what we do. And quite frankly, as a backroom boy or girl, you deserve the credit. So it's going to be short and sweet today. I'm going to ask artists if you can absolutely ensure you add our names to your metadata. And if you're one of the backroom people, I'm going to ask you just to be brave and don't be afraid to ask for your credit. It's going to have a huge effect upon your career going forward. And maybe one day someone will see your name, love what you do, and be inspired to continue our profession into the future. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. It's a short one, but it's an important one. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave me any comments, questions, or reach out if you just want to say hi. Well, that's it, and I'll see you in the next episode of the pod.